Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for our third Grand Tour of the year, our big ultimate Vuelta España 2023 preview, with this episode presented to you by Morton, one of our new partners. It starts in Barcelona. We're going in person. We'll be there at the, I don't actually know what Grand Depart is in Spanish, which is bizarre because I don't speak Italian, but I know it's Grande Partenza. You can clip that. But in Italian for the Giro. But we're going to Barcelona for the TTT. Technical one starts there, and then heading up to Andorra for stage 3 in the first week of this Vuelta. What do you make of the parcours, Benji, which I think, just an overview, is very different to last year's, especially in the third week?
Exactly. So a bit of a recap. Last year, the third week was a weaker week where we did not necessarily see the decisive terrain where you could take minutes, for example, where you could upset the GC significantly. And when I look at this parkour, I feel like it's an evenly matched weeks throughout. And the start is already kind of pretty hard if we take a look at week 1, starting off with a team time trial and moving up directly towards the Andorran region, where you've got the likes of Arinsal as a finish, which is a pretty tough climb towards the end of that stage. And the stages in between are hilly stage with some flat stages, but the hilly stages, mountain ones in there. And week 2, same story. They kind of travel towards the Valladolid region, I would say, in week 2, but I feel like they just go back to the Pyrenees the first chance they get to get back into the mountains, to get to the likes of the Tourmalet. And those stages are rough, big mountain stages, but also, once again, medium mountain stages. And there's a lot of those Unipuerto, so Unipuerto, a single climb at the finish line, Rampa and Humana stages. And I feel like some of them look like carbon copies of each other, but we'll deep dive into each and every single one of them later in this podcast. And then in week 3, I'd say they go through Asturias to the left side of Spain a bit, and then through Angliru a bit south. And there's a combination of rough climbs like Angliru and combination of rough medium mountain stages like stage 20, you'll see. But overall, looks like a very difficult Grand Tour. And I feel like we've got a very solid start list to begin with. So in general, we're up for fireworks.
Very, very difficult route. And, going back into France, which is interesting, 2 stages in France, and using the Tourmalet from the other side to what was used in the Tour de France this year. That's one of the hardest stages in cycling this year, stage 13. Yep. So that's not one to be missed. Like, that has Spandel, where Poggi attacked Jonas last year, preceded by the Obisque. That's a brutal short stage. So short stages, I see really big raid opportunities in a few of these stages, like 14, and stage 20 is the Javier Gillen special after Fue un placer, señores. Bueno, yo me quedo por aquí. He wants to replicate the Miguel Angel Lopez getting off the bike, losing 3rd position. That's why that stage 20 is in there. Because, that's another brutal stage where you do not want to be 10 seconds ahead defending that jersey on that stage with a weak team. So, and there's also, replete with, I don't even know if they're Caden Grove sprint stages. Some of them aren't hard enough. Like, what is a sprint stage in the Vuelta? What even is the sprinter in the Vuelta?
Honestly,
none of them have turned up.
I agree, none of them have turned up, but if we take a look at the parkour, I reckon there's a lot of opportunities for sprinters, because the majority of these sprint stage, at least like 3 or 4 of them, have like 2 hills that are like 3%, and I'm like,
they're soft.
My grandma can get over that, so, well, maybe not.
You're right, actually. There's not so many that are preceded by quite a difficult, like a 2K 10% climb in the last 10Ks, which the Tour de France has started to use a lot. And obviously, we've buried the lead as well. This Remco said it in the interview last week. Maybe this has the best start list of any Grand Tour this year, any stage race this year, with the 2 Jumbo-Visma leaders joining forces, Roglic and Vingegaard, to compete against last year's winner, Remco Evenepoel, who looked good in the Giro before he got COVID. The young buck, Juan Ayuso, is UAE's probably A1 leader, supported by Almeida. Mas is always good in the Vuelta, 3 times second. Thomas, who was second in the Giro, is prepared really seriously for this. So the start list is really, really good. The only top guys that are missing, I would say, are Poggi and Adam Yates. But they've got Ayuso here and maybe Hindley and O'Connor. So super stacked start list. I can't wait. And Yeah, we're going to do this as normal. So we're going to do discussion of the favorites and their teams, then into the sprinters and their teams as well, then into our patented stage by stage analysis of each stage, some of which we know pretty well, and all the rampas in Humanas that they have. But before we get into that, I want to mention our partner for this episode, Morton. I first heard about Morton, I think about 3 years ago. I bonked really, really hard. It was at Costa Seda down when I lived further south in Andorra. And people said Morton gels because they're light, they're easily palatable and digestible. And so I got onto them there. And then they've made a big splash in the cycling world. And what Morton is and why it's different to other brands is it's allowed a complete rethink of the amount of carbs that a cyclist or any other endurance athlete can tolerate without causing stomach problems. Because the gel, or there's a hydrogel that encapsulates the carbohydrates. And so you absorb more of those carbohydrates and you have less likelihood of gastrointestinal distress. So that's worked really, really well for me, particularly when, one of the gel 100s, for example, has 25 grams of carbohydrate, 2 of them, and I can put a drink mix. I really like the drink mixes, the 160s. You have 2 gels and a drink mix 160 in my little hiking vest. That's lightweight. I don't even notice it. To be honest, the biggest thing for me is the texture. I don't like syrup. I don't like the sweet, sticky rubbish on my fingers, on my pack, in my expensive €300 jerseys that you can't get any cheaper than a jersey. Much more gel-like, much cleaner, less mess, especially when riding. All natural, no colors or preservatives. Morton's used by Jumbo-Visma for a few years now. Team SD works, so both teams that won their respective Tour de France's this year. And the Morton bicarb system has obviously been a key talking point recently, especially at the Giro and Tour de France. So, for the next 72 hours, Morton is giving you LRCP listeners a one-time 20% off code to use on Morton.com for orders of gels and drink mixes, everything except the Morton bicarb system. Enter the code Lanterne Rouge, all one word. Don't forget the E at the end of Lanterne with a capital L. Lanterne Rouge at the checkout within the next 72 hours to save 20% off your Morton order. But the hydrogel range is growing, so wait until later in the Vuelta España. We'll have some more news on the hydrogel range from Morton in a later episode. But thanks to them for supporting the show and LRCP. Favorites, Benji. Who's your favorite before I tell you the betting odds?
Who's my favorite? It's difficult. I'm going to start off by saying it's difficult because it all depends of which form each rider arrives at.
Yeah.
Because Jonas Vingegaard is on paper, if you look at the paper, if you look at the data and so forth, he's the best GC rider in the world. So if he arrives at top form, he should win this race. But he's done the Tour de France. He's probably done some events afterwards with the sponsors of Jumbo-Visma, had to go probably to the Visma headquarters and so forth. Probably had to do some after-tour criteriums a few times. So combine all those things and you've got a rider that lost maybe a tiny bit of preparation, but I also believe that they're professional enough at Jumbo-Visma to have a proper preparation, even though...
Debatable. Just kidding.
They're
about to fucking send me a text.
He's about to punch you in the face. Nah.
But he didn't do an altitude camp, did he?
Correct.
So he hasn't done his Tour de France prep.
Yeah,
it's not the same.
That is true. It's not the same, and it's also a shorter period, so there is some uncertainty there. And Vingegaard's also not the most consistent rider throughout the year. He's been more consistent this year than last year, though, so that is there. But let's hope he doesn't arrive in Paris-Nice form, otherwise he's not the most competing rider in this race. But then Roglic, yeah, he's one of those riders where he's won a lot of races this year. I feel 4 stage races, the ones he turned up at, the likes of Tirreno, the likes of Catalunya and so forth.
11 races, I think.
Ooh, crazy. So in those 4 stage races, Tirreno, for example, got to talk about that for a second. He won, in my opinion, as a consequence of there being headwind, for example, on the big mountain stage, because he was being dropped at that moment. Then he played it very defensively, very smart. He's been riding so smart this year, and it really has favored him in some occasions, because that's the reason he ended up winning Tirreno. And then Catalunya, I reckon he was also one of the 2 stronger riders there, but I also feel like he rode very clever there. So in a sprint, for example, he's got that principle now where he launches, then he sits up a bit, and then he launches again, and it surprises everybody, and it basically tricks everybody, and that's how he wins stages a bit more chance than usual. And he's riding really smart this year. Now, when it comes to last week in Burgos, for example, I was expecting Roglic to win Burgos. He didn't drop everybody completely necessarily.
He hasn't dropped anyone this year.
Yeah, and
has he gone clear once
thing.
this year?
Good question.
I don't
unless
think
unless you count dropping Remco in the last kilometer at Catalunya once, but
no, that doesn't count. That's a sprint.
Yeah, I don't know then.
Because that's the Burgos thing. Yeah, he's clearly trying to do the least amount to win the race. He's not trying to drop Adam Yates with 2Ks to go, so you don't know where his limits are. So it's really difficult to assess. And yeah, in terms of their overall team, Jumbo-Visma, they bring a ridiculous squad, frankly. They're two, people who won the 2 Grand Tours earlier this year, Vingegaard, Roglic, supported by the ultimate lieutenant, Sepp Kuss. Well, he's American, I'll say lieutenant. Kelderman, Van Baarle. Kelderman in, decent shape of the Tour, maybe better here. Walter has been very impressive this year. Geesink is sort of he's the flat rouleur, actually. And then Jan Tratnik, who had that awful crash when he prepared for the Giro. In photos, he looks as skinny as Roglic. So, crazy stuff. So,
I'm so hyped.
Yeah, I was very... I loved Tratnik last year. In Bahrain, he was an insane rider, particularly in the Vuelta. And if you remember the Covadonga stage, who was chasing in the valley after Collario Omena? The group behind? Jan Tratnik.
Olympics before Mikuni.
Incredible rider. But anyway, the team's kind of an embarrassment of riches to the point where those two working together and the overall strategy is actually going to be a very, very fine balance. Do you think they're too light on rouleurs, Benji? Or is Geesink that guy? And is the Vuelta is not the Tour?
I agree with that last statement. The Vuelta is not the Tour. The other teams also have limited rouleurs. So we've got it's kind of a relative thing. You have to have rouleurs relative to other teams and relative to the terrain. And I feel like the terrain is a lot of medium mountains, hills, big mountains, and it's not necessarily the rouleurs that will decide this race either, I feel like. So Van Baarle plus Geesink plus Tratnik, you can't complain with riders like that. The best thing about these riders is that they can do both the climbing and the rouleur type. Even Kelderman can do flat rouleur shit if he requires to do so.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they might be climbers on paper, but they've got a rouleur skill next to it. And that's something that, for example, let me try and find the name. Even Soler can kind of do that for UAE, but that's less on paper than the riders that are on Jumbo-Visma, for example. And then even if we look at Quickstep, there's a few riders that can do it, like a Cataneo, but less than what I see in a Tratnik and in a Van Baarle, for example. But overall, this is a very strong team.
That's why Oliveira is so good in the Vuelta.
Yeah,
because he's perfect for that, and Castroviejo too for Ineos. Like you
wait,
it's so hilly. Nelson.
Okay,
yeah, on Movistar.
There's 3 here.
True. Yeah, they're not related. But yeah, the Jumbo-Visma team have the 2 top favorites. I'm not sure about that. Vingegaard's the overall favorite in the betting at $2. Roglic is actually second favorite at $3.25. Quite a bit ahead of Remco, who's at $4.75, which we'll get to his team now. I am surprised by that. I just think Remco may be a little bit better. But then we'll get to his team, which might be the reason for that, Benji. Evenepoel leading Quickstep. They announced it yesterday. Vavaka, Cataneo, Baggioli, Jan Hirt, James Knox, Casper Pedersen, Peter Seri. Where is Alaphilippe? Where's Lampard? Where's Asgreen? Where's Van Wilder? 4 of his best domestiques on the team, on the overall Quickstep roster, are not here. I was shocked when I saw this team announcement, I'll be honest.
Same thing. It's not the strongest team they can put in this race by a long shot, but I'm also of the opinion that, yes, 100%. Van Wilder, we saw an article, for example, in the last 2 weeks that he was saying, he was once also referring to the fact that he doesn't really want to work for Evenepoel every single race, which, if you're young, I can kind of understand that, even though in the Vuelta he should probably get in line. But the main reason he's not at the Vuelta, according to the articles, was that he doesn't feel ready to do 2 Grand Tour preparations in a year, which, if they assess that that is the right thing, outside I cannot be like, oh, he must ride 2 Grand Tours per season, even though I would hope that he would, because it's such a major difference for Remco to have Van Wilder there versus not. And the rest of the team that is here, like a Cataneo, like a Bajoli, I don't really know why Bajoli is here. I feel like Schmidt's better in every way. Now, Bajoli can win a stage or compete for a stage with the field that we have here. But when it comes to support for Evenepoel, I'm not really there. Casper Pedersen is interesting, as in, I think Casper Pedersen is better than people think, but not necessarily to be the guy for Remco Evenepoel here either. So it somewhat feels to me that they've got a double-sided team. A GC team with some riders that could do some stuff if that doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's strange. Like, Van Wilder thing actually makes sense out of all of it because they agreed before the year he would domestique at the Giro. He was going to do that and that he wouldn't have to do it for the rest of the year. Quickstep kept their promise to him. Also, if they broke that promise, he probably would have left the team. His contract's up for renewal. That's just if you want to keep the rider for future years. I see why it makes sense for both parties. And it's not his fault that everyone got COVID in the Giro. The weird thing to me is, yeah, the Asgreen, Lampard. Asgreen's got a lot of race days, but yeah, Lampard, Alaphilippe, and I don't know, man. Like,
yeah, but
Baggioli is maybe he can help with some of the sort of punchy lead outs for Remco. Knox could be good. He was good in Pace Vasco, where he came second on the Ibar stage, the final difficult stage. But then in Tour de Suisse, he was back to, Knox is super inconsistent. He came good when his contract was up, and, will he be good now that he's been extended? I think. I'm not sure. He had the same question. So you compare this to Jumbo's team, and I went on a big spiel about, Remco could have a decent team for the Tour next year. He could. But the lack of depth at Quickstep is really showing in this Vuelta team. But maybe they'll outperform it. Maybe Hirden Knox will be super, and Vavaka's obviously solid. But yeah, I think there's a big risk of Remco isolation. Anyway, but he's had like Roglic the pretty much perfect prep for this race. Ineos Benji, probably one of the obviously the top 4 strongest teams in the race, the favourites of the team time trial. De Plus, Thomas is their leader for GC. Ganna fresh off second in World Champs TT. Aronsman, 6th in the Giro. Bernal, the surprise inclusion for me. Castroviejo, Freyler, Hajduk, also the surprise inclusion for everybody, including himself and Luke Rowe, over Luke Rowe. So, what do you make of this Ineos team, which is actually very strong in the rouleau department?
I don't necessarily mind them losing out on Luke Rowe, even though, he's done a preparation and so forth. But a lot of riders do that towards his Grand Tour, and I feel bad that he's not here and so forth. But I also enjoy seeing Kim Hajduk getting an opportunity in this Grand Tour for the future, because Hajduk has become better throughout the year. I feel like last year I was like, ooh, is he really worth of being in this team? But I feel like he's kind of shown that he deserves to be in World Tour this year, and that he might deserve an opportunity at the Vuelta to show up. So I don't necessarily hate that selection. But when it comes to the rest of the team, I'd say Thomas tries to get a podium, but I think a top 5 is more realistic with the start list we have at the start here. He's got the support for it. Arensman, the plus. Arensman might be somewhat co-leader for a bit, in the same way that he was at the Giro, to then fold into domestique role if necessary in the last week, for example. Bernal's a gamble, as always, as in, I hope he becomes better. I hope he turns into form. But right now, I see him as a domestique in this race, and
I think they made a mistake here. They're taking Bernal because Sivakov's leaving. Remember, we were driving back from the Remco interview, and we saw Sivakov in the TTs going up Port d'Anvalira last week, and he didn't know at that point he wasn't doing the Vuelta. He thought he was doing the Vuelta. You cannot tell me that Bernal earned that spot over Sivakov on merit. No way. Not. If you're Thomas, you would want Sivakov. And I think Sivakov is a very professional rider and would have done a good job as a domestique. So that's just contracts. That's because Bernal's signed until the end of 26 and Sivakov's leaving. And I don't even think it's the best thing for Bernal. I would have thought he's already done the Tour. He's already done 58 race days. Does he need to do 70 race days this year? And he's crashed this year again 3 times or 2 times, like in Hungary or whatever. So I thought he would have done Deutschland and got his own result. So I'm surprised he's in the Italian Classics. So yeah, that makes no sense to me. But it's a solid team. Like Castro is a beast still. So it's a solid enough team. UAE Benji.
Yes.
The Almeida Ayuso dual leadership. Molano's the best sprinter in this race. Finn Fisher Black, maybe the surprise inclusion, but I think he's got a lot to offer.
Deserved.
The Rouleurs, yeah, I think he'll be a nice rider, and good to see him at the Vuelta. Oliveira brothers as the Rouleurs, Soler as the wild card, can do it all, and Jay Vine is the pure climber in this squad. It's probably the second strongest squad in the race, and I think the squad favorite to win the most stages because of Milano.
I reckon that's very possible because Milano's a candidate for sprint stages because there's just no sprint field at this Vuelta. Like, the sprint field at this Vuelta is pretty damn weak. So that's why he shows up as one of the riders, one of the top 4 riders to win sprints in this race. But outside of that, they've also got opportunities in... This is not the team that sits back and doesn't let riders in the breakaway for stage wins. Soler could go into the break and win a stage here or there. You could see the same with some other riders in this team. Like, if Vine falls out of GC, that might be an option. But when it comes to their leadership, I think that's the most important part of this discussion. Almeida, Ayuso, Vine, I reckon they don't start with an A1 leader. As in, on paper, in their mind, Ayuso might be the one going into this, but he's also been inconsistent this year. So I reckon they will try and keep Ayuso and Almeida up there in GC, even Vine at the start maybe, until one of them gets far enough where they realize, okay, he's definitely domestique, let's use him as a domestique from this point onwards, because they also want to win the UCI points ranking at the end of the year, and last year they did the same exact thing in the Vuelta where they kept both up there, so it wouldn't shock me if they try the same this time around, unless they come to a point where Ayuso is an actual vision of winning this race, then they might change that strategy.
Yeah, maybe. I think Vine will definitely be in a domestique role, probably for Ayuso. He did it for Almeida in the Giro, but I don't think they're going for 3 towards the podium. Maybe, but there's no harm, like with Kush, trying to keep him in GC for as long as possible. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him staying in GC, particularly as I don't see why he would lose a lot of time on the Aronsol finish, for example. Maybe the punchy finishes in stage 2 are better for Ayuso, but yeah, it's a very, very strong team. Movistar, the home team, Enric Mas, he is probably the next in line. He's actually ahead of Thomas in the betting. Verona, Lazcano, who just won a stage in Burgos and is just a revelation of this year. Rubio won the stage in the Giro and also incredibly strong. And Jabel Jais, I think. Garcia Cortina, their sprinter. Oliveira, top 10 in World TT. Guerrero has kind of gone missing since... Yeah.
Gran Camino?
Since Gran Camino and Saudi Tour. And Jorge Arcas is just as the overall dom to do the dirty work. So it's a very good team. It's a very good team. It's missing no Erviti, no Jose Joaquin Rojas, no Valverde, Benji. It's a changing of era.
Yeah, a very, very big change of the guards. And Lazcano, I'm super hyped to see what he can do. But there's so many other GC riders in this race, but I feel like we've named the ones that are the pure ones. We've got the Bardays of the world that are also in this race. And then we look at the likes of Butrago-Caruso combination, I would say, together with Landa at Bahrain Victorious. So what do you reckon?
I expect nothing from Landa.
You expect nothing from Landa? Oof, interesting. Butrago, Caruso, GC opportunity or likely Caruso?
For sure. But Caruso looked terrible in Burgos, but then I don't think it suited him too much. I don't know. They were weird. They were not good at Burgos, the Bahrain Victorious team. I don't know. Pools is here for them as well. Tiberi, Sutulin, Govakar for some of the sprints, as well as Gradek as the ruler. They'll probably win a couple of stages, maybe from the break with Pools or Tiberi or a medium mountain break with Govakar. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough to assess the form of Butrago and Caruso. I'd say Butrago will probably be their best rider on GC overall. And yeah, DSM, as you said, like they got a young team too with Dainese as probably the second best sprinter in the race. Only Pool. I really want to see how Pool goes on GC. Jaco Alula, they bring Eddie Dunbar, who did well in the first 2 weeks of the Giro, fade a little bit at the end. He's got Zana, who won that stage ahead of Pino, Sobrero, Scottson, Hepburn, Hagos Berhe, and Engelhardt. Engelhardt's actually quite good. I think that's Luke's favorite rider, the 23-year-old German. So that's actually a sneaky, really strong team from Jaco. To Trek have a GC guy. Juanpe will probably try go top 10.
Juanpe, you could say, but I don't necessarily see that as the all-out opportunity there. top 15 in GC is the more likely scenario where he gets some breakaways and tries opportunities through that. Keon Uiterbroeks is an interesting one together with the likes of Vlasov and Higita, but that team is unconfirmed right now, Bora. So I am pretty sure Keon Uiterbroeks and Vlasov are doing it. I am relatively certain Kemna and Higita might as well. So that could be a really strong team if it is all is summed up towards the end. Hugh Carvey here for the likes of EF Education First, also unconfirmed right now. So these are riders that could also compete for the things, although I haven't seen Hugh Carty for a while now, I feel like, this year. But I'd reckon that those are the names for GC, and I believe we can go into the smaller teams a bit more once we get into stages and we see opportunities in their team that could take a stage here on there. But that's it for GC riders, no?
Well, there's just a lot of teams who haven't brought a top sprinter and haven't brought a GC rider. Like Azure Desert have brought, okay, you can, I'm not saying it's a bad team. Like Godon was very good this year, but, Vendrame, Bouchard, Lapierre, it's all about Ages are going for a stage in a mountain break. Total has just been shocking this year overall. Intermarché's the same. Like they don't, okay, Gerben Thijssen, actually he can win a stage, but with Hugo Page lead out, that might be a bit weird. But again, they're in that way. And same with probably Cofidis. I don't know if they're not confirmed either. I wish they brought Lecoq because he could really win here. And Lotto Destiny, I think Van Eedveld can really top 10 GC here. Like he's
top 10 GC.
Yeah, for sure.
I was a stage win guy for him.
I think he can top 10 GC. But they're going for the stage with like Kronen de Gent. I think was that the combo in the Giro? Don't know, but don't be surprised if they win a stage from a breakaway as well. But did you mention Groupama?
I did not mention Groupama, but we're big on them, right?
We're big. That's why I want to mention them. Yeah, Gregoire for stage 2. Don't be surprised if he just straight up wins the thing.
Yeah,
ahead of Roglic and Remco. Like I think he's got a better sprint than them. Like this guy steps off classics guys uphill, like DeLee. So I think it's an incredible team for such a young team. Like they are literally like Stora, Millard, Gregoire, Martinez, Germani. Why did I do it Spanish? He's Italian. Watson, Askey, Davey. So 2 young British guys. It's just the youngsters. I think the vibes will be good. Lenny said he's going for what top 1? He said not top 10, not top 3, top 1 on Twitter, and I support that. Lenny Martinez winning the Vuelta. I loved it too. So I'm really hyped for them. And I think they'll win a stage. Or I hope they do. But before we'll discuss the team hierarchy in a second. Big news though from our end. We have finally launched the Lanterne Rouge and Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast merch, the Tug Buddy shirts, which you've seen us wearing. We designed these a while ago. And the backstory on this is we wanted to do merch that was actually not just slapping the logo that we already had on something. We actually wanted to make it cool. We wanted it to be the memes and the catchphrases from the podcast. And so I contacted Leuemans, who does the sort of, if you see the prints behind me, the relegation era prints from last year. He trained or studied at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp. And we discussed for a long time and he's an active listener of the podcast as well, what should be on the merch. Tug Buddy number 1, but also if you look at, I think we tested this as well, the back of the LRCP one, it has Crosswind, Disappointment, Rampas Inhumanas, Quokka Raw. You can see it all on the website, shop.lanternrouge.com. And yeah, I'm really, really proud of it. I think there's mugs as well. Go get yourself a coffee, Benji. I'm about to go off to impress your co-workers. There's a thermonuclear Lanterne Rouge t-shirt with a vulture dropping me in onto a bike to say thermonuclear. There's a sick baseball cap as well. And yeah, what's your favorite one, Benji?
Oh, it's difficult. I like the mug, but the problem is that I don't drink coffee, so I have no use for it. So it's just sitting there.
Your wife stole it.
Yeah, my wife also stole it, so that's also the case. But it's also sitting there right now on the closet right there. But next to that, I really like the LRCP shirt with the art on the back, which is the one I'm wearing at this very moment. So check that out on shop.lanternrouge.com because that one's really beautiful.
I think it is, yeah. And we did loads of revisions. Leuemans hand drew these from scratch, and I think for creator merch, I think it's actually I'm pretty proud of it, to be honest. Like the what's of the what's and so forth. Fake news climbs as a consequence. All the catchphrases are there. Go and check it out. We've tested the merch. We got samples in, made sure it didn't shrink too much in the wash, and it was good quality. We've got sizing on the website, and yeah, we're all sharing the revenue amongst ourselves and to help keep the podcast going. And also, it's mainly sort of a community building thing. I like having the LRCP or Lanterne Rouge merch. They're having the hat to wear. We'll be wearing it at the Vuelta this week as well. So go and check it out. And yeah, we appreciate all your support. Let us know which ones you like, or perhaps what you'd like to see in the future. All right, Benji, we've gone through the favorites. How do you actually see the hierarchy of this race before we do the stage by stages? Like, who is the team everyone looks to control things? Who is going to stamp their foot on the table and control maybe the first week? Is it Ineos? Is it Jumbo? Like, how do you actually see the respective team strategies going into it from the top 4 GC teams?
I love how you're burying the lead, but I feel like Jumbo-Visma's the team that everybody's going to be looking at because they've got the 2 on paper betting favorites, not necessarily the 2 favorites in our eyes necessarily, but Roglic and Vingegaard both being in the same team means that they will kind of command how the race goes in certain ways. Yes, other teams might try something, but Jumbo also has the strongest team here. Like, this is the strongest team. It's probably one of the strongest teams they could come up with in the first place. Obviously, the Van Aerts of the world aren't here. Like, maybe if you switch Geesink with Van Aert and so forth, you can make it even more horrid of a team. But this is a very strong team, and we kind of have to go back to what their ambitions are. Obviously, winning the race, winning their 3rd Grand Tour in a row here, 3 in 1 season. But how will they try to raise the race? And there's 2 questions that I have. So, well, first of all, I've got a statement. I think that the hardest stages, like the Tourmalet stage, the Angliru stage, is basically a situation where Angliru is different, but Tourmalet, I look at it with, okay, they're going to shrink the group down as much as they can. And then they've got 2 GC riders against other riders of teams where they are isolated on paper. Except maybe UAE with Ayuso and Almeida, but Remco should on paper be isolated relatively quickly on the climbs with the team that he has. And then they can roll attacks with Roglic and Vingegaard, but is that favorable for a Roglic, for example? Is that favorable for a Vingegaard? I feel like the hardest stages are more favored towards a Vingegaard in peak form. And then you look at the Unipuerto stages, the ones where you've got 5 kilometers with 9% as 4 of the 5 kilometers, for example. Then you're like, okay, they could just go all out and try to launch Vingegaard, but they also got the option of Roglic with a sprint at the end. So there's so many opportunities for them. But, for example, the team time trial at the start, their result will also influence how the first week will go. Because Jumbo's the kind of team, let's say they win the team time trial, that they might end up being the team that it says, okay, stage 2, I don't really want to chase anybody. Stage 3, I don't really want to chase anybody. The what is it again? The red jersey is lava?
Yeah, the red jersey is lava. I mean, I think with the strength of this start list, I think they need to take all the bonus seconds Roglic can get, to be honest. Because, as I said, he hasn't dropped any one of Remco's, like he didn't drop Remco in Catalonia. And there's a 24k TT where Remco should beat him as well. He put 45 seconds into him in the Giro opening TT when he wasn't 6. So I think he might not be able to just rest on his laurels and say, oh, well, Mars won't drop me. I'll beat him in the Bonies. I'll beat him in the TT like in previous Vueltas, and he doesn't have to drop anybody. But then, as you said, there is that inherent, you go for the bonus seconds with Roglic. Remco is probably better than Vingegaard with his punch on a Unipuerto, and then Vingegaard could lose out, or even to Ayuso, and he could lose 10 seconds, or Remco could beat Roglic on those sprints, I think, sometimes. So that's a difficult balance. Ineos also, we talk about Remco being isolated against Jumbo. I think he could be isolated against 3 teams.
Yep.
UAE got the 2. Aronsman's going to stay in GC with Thomas. No way they burn Aronsman at Ineos. I think this could be like Pace Vasco last year, where there's there could be groups of 8 and 9. UAE with like Vine plus the 2 leaders. Jumbo with Koos plus the 2 leaders. Ineos with De Plus plus the 2 leaders. And then just Remco. And if it starts to kick off, they're going to really put him under pressure. So, yeah, it's tough for him being on his own without Van Wilder.
100%. And then it almost feels like offense might be his best defense in certain occasions, as in if he's in a group of 9 and there's 6 kilometers to go on a single climb to the finish line, it might be best to open up the race and hope that he can shred that group to 4-3 riders with some interest there to keep the others behind so that someone else tries to ride with you and so forth. But then two Jumbos might be there, and then you're looking at two Jumbos in the phase, and then they're going to be like, oh, now we can roll attacks on you, Remco. So that's also what they want at that point. So it's going to be a really tactical race next to the fact that we've got very strong leaders in that sense. And like, winning Ineos, they're going to ride defensively. We know that. They're going to fake pace wherever they can to make sure Thomas and Arensman can stay as high up in GC as possible. And they're not the team that does the most tactical things, as in sending a rider up there, like sending an Arensman into the attack to try and benefit from the fact that he's 3 minutes behind in GC or something. I'm just orchestrating a scenario here for a second. UAE did that in the final week of the Vuelta last year, but they also did that in the final week, so I don't expect Ayuso and Almeida to work together in that sense. I think it's more survival in their first weeks and see where they are after week one. And I don't know, how consistent will Ayuso be? Will Almeida be as good as he was in the Giro? Will he be better? Stuff like that. So there's a lot of questions in that sense. And how do you see, like, if you're Remco, what is your best way of riding these races?
I think, like you said, I think it's trying to be aggressive. If you have, like, first of all, if Vingegaard has pretty good legs and Remco doesn't have his best legs, he can't win.
Yeah.
So this is all going, if Remco's in his top ever shape, I think you're right. Being aggressive and then maybe I think you got to try and knock the weaker co-leader out of GC on these teams as quickly as possible. So you go on a climb, drop Roglic, Vingegaard's in your wheel, just keep pacing. Because if you stop, then Roglic comes back or Vingegaard comes back, and then they roll you and you gain nothing from your attack. So I think, or if you got to put Almeida out of the picture or Arensman further out of the picture. So I think early on, you're right. If you got the legs, be aggressive. But that's the problem. He tried that in Catalonia. Roglic came over the top of him on low port. He tried that in Tour de Suisse, opening mountain stage. Gall and Schjelmoser rolled him. Now, he wasn't in his best shape there, but the risk of that is if you don't drop the other guy, in the last K, they'll do a surge while you're cooked, and they can take 20 seconds on you. So, I don't know. I agree Ineos will be defensive, but if it is kicking off, they will send guys with a move. Like, if Roglic attacks with Almeida, they won't just ignore that.
Yeah.
They will, and I hope they would try to send a guy with it rather than just pacing with the Plus afterwards. I mean, maybe they just pace after it, but they can't be that defensive in the Vuelta. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. Now, maybe there's no tactics. Maybe Vingegaard's close to Tour shape, smokes everybody, and there are no tactics. I don't know.
I agree with that. I agree in that sense. I also feel like there's an interesting discussion surrounding how Remco could respond to, let's say, UAE goes up the road. Remco shouldn't do anything. Unless Jumbo
100%.
bridges towards it, respond to Jumbo. He needs to benefit from the fact and play off the dynamics of other races and kind of put pressure on Jumbo to close gaps and put pressure on Jumbo everywhere that he can. And he's going to have to be really witty, really fast thinking and so forth in races, no?
Exactly. Like, it is not. You see this team, Quickstep, and maybe Quickstep brought this team saying, it's not our responsibility to fix any problem. We can't fix any problem. And that's right. Like, if Ayuso kicks off early, him pacing, I mean, there's no way he will pace on a climb with Vingegaard and Roglic in the wheel. That would just be insanity. It's not like Tour de Suisse. There's no way. So, but yeah, he can't do that. Maybe Mars and Movistar start pacing. But if Sepp Kuss is there, it's Jumbo's. Any problem, Jumbo's responsibility to fix it.
But about Jumbo for a second, a bit more about them. You mentioned, okay, they might want to go for every opportunity they can to get bonus seconds here or there on every single one of these Unipuerto stages, on a stage 2 even, for example. All the stages that look remotely controllable, they'll try and do that. Is that your take, or would you say it's going to be a pick and choose of like, ooh, this stage is a bit more fitting to be able to control, or will they try it every time?
It depends, I guess. It depends on the TTT, as you said. Like, maybe Ineos win the TTT and then control stage 2 anyway. I think that's a real possibility. And then Ineos winning the TTT.
I'd say they give the jersey away on stage 2 if they win the TTT.
Probably because Thomas ain't beating Roglic. Like Thomas loses if the break doesn't win stage 2, Thomas loses 10 seconds, guaranteed. So you're right. Maybe they don't. I mean, it would be insane to control it. But stranger things have happened. But you're right. I don't know. I don't think Vingegaard's punch is that bad.
Correct.
Like, so but it's not like, especially maybe not stage 2, but especially on some of the you said a 4K 9% climb. I'm not so convinced Vingegaard would even lose a sprint if it's been hard enough. So, I mean, his punch is outstanding. It depends how hard the climb has been. If it's turned into a longer climb and then there's fatigue, it's different. It also depends on his shape. But as I said, this is not like if you want Roglic to win and you're adding up all the time and he hasn't dropped any. Like, would you expect Roglic to just drop Ayuso and Anglerud? I wouldn't.
It depends on how good Ayuso is that arrives.
Like good Ayuso.
Good Ayuso, I wouldn't either. And
like Roglic had a crisis on Anglerud 3 years ago.
Exactly. He had his weakness on Anglerud a few years ago. But I do want to talk about one more thing when it comes to Roglic. That's his sprint. But Emco's sprint got better this year.
For sure.
Ayuso has a sprint.
He's a weird
one. Yeah, he's a weird one, but I'll let you get into that in a second. How confident are you that Roglic will win the bonus seconds versus Evenepoel and Ayuso?
It really depends, actually. It depends on the particular climb. I think in terms of 30-second punch, I'll take Roglic over Remco.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of a flat sprint, if Roglic leads him out like he led out Adam Yates in that Vuelta stage 3 on the flat, I think Remco will come over the top of him. So, like Roglic 5-second, 10-second burst isn't that good. He's like a long sprint, and that's why uphill he can get separation. So, I think if Roglic treats Remco like he's useless and just leads him out, then he can win the sprint. So, Remco, that is. Whereas in the past, that might not have been the case. Remco doesn't have Poggy sprint, but I don't think Roglic can just do what he wants, sprint away from him, particularly on the flat.
And if Jumbo is going for bonus seconds on those stages, will that impact Vingegaard? Because Vingegaard, his sprint is not dog shit, but it's on paper not as good as Evenepoel and Ayuso in my head, which I'm looking at a scenario where Roglic takes time and then Vingegaard loses time to the other favorites on those type of tough terrain, or are there opportunities for reverse leadouts where Vingegaard goes early, kind of gets the others out of their den, have to respond to Vingegaard, which gives Vingegaard an opportunity to take time, but then Roglic has to beat them over the line as well.
Probably Roglic will chase him, like on Poggio when he closed, Van Aert's wheel 3,000 times in San Remo last year. I don't know. It's very difficult. I mean, yes, what you said in theory could work, but it's very difficult, as we saw with Marcin Lopez, to, in the hectic final 500 meters, get everything right, like on Picon Blanco a few years ago. But you're right. I don't know. Maybe Vingegaard sprints from behind in the draft and he can come over Remco. But anyway, lots of tactics to talk about. We'll get into these stages that we've been alluding to now. The opening stage is a technical city team time trial around Barcelona. Some narrow streets, a lot of tram track crossings. It's pretty flat. There's a lot of corners, over a corner per kilometer. We'll be there. I'll try book a restaurant for us on the course before they realize the TTT's coming through. If there's any left. Who do you think's winning this, Benji? Who do you think it suits? I think if it was non-technical, I think Jumbo would have struggled a bit more than they should have, because their Paris TTT wasn't as good as I expected. But it being technical, I think their team is quite good for it. But I still have Ineos as the favourites. I think they win with a decent margin, actually.
Well, Ineos has a strong TT team, like Thomas can TT. Ganna can definitely TT. Arensman can solidly TT as well. Castroviejo as well. Fraile de Plus are the ones where I've got on the row behind, the ones I've already mentioned when it comes to time trial skills, but they still can TT. Hajduk, I don't know. So that's one where I'm like, me?
But he's kind of a lead-out guy, so he could be good in a TTT.
Yeah, that's true. And also in a technical TT in that sense. But then look at the technicality of this parkour. You said it. I think there's about 18 corners roughly in about 15 kilometers. So that being the case, I'm talking about proper corners. If we consider the other bends, it's probably 21 or so. But Proper corners, roughly 18. It's also a roundabout here or there, so that's also not included in that. So it's very technical. What does that favor? Does that impact the amount of gaps we'll have? Because in a time trial with less gaps, you could argue that the riders with technical skills will gain more time in those technical sections versus on the aero sections that an aero person will gain more on an aero on a technical person. But then you look at a team time trial and you've got teams with half the team being technical riders and half the team being aero riders, and you kind of have to think about, okay, they need to consider that within the team as well. And could this cause the fact that we won't have gigantic gaps in this team time trial?
Yeah, like Thomas said on his podcast, like Castro is a strong time trialist, but sitting behind him sucks because he's like really small and technical and aero. And so, yeah, positioning, sequencing, when do you pull off? How long is your pull? Don't pull off mid, just before a corner. It'll slow everybody down. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how teams do it. And yeah, but I take Ineos. Who you got, Benji? I mean, Quickstep would probably should run top 3. Pedersen's not too bad. They got a great setup. They won the UAE Tour TTT, but they had a better team from memory there for that one. They had Merlier.
Jumbo-Visma is my take.
You got Jumbo.
On the fast flat TTs, I'm not confident in their equipment. And the technical one, I don't think that equipment will be the all-out decider.
Okay, you got Jumbo. Stage 2, Benji will do odds, I'll do even. Stage 2 from 184 Ks from Mataró, which is just outside of Barcelona. They do a few Catalunya little warm-up climbs, 11K 4%, 4K 4%, nothing too serious. It should be an easy enough day, but it's long. It's pretty long for a Vuelta, 180 Ks. And then 2 punchy climbs in Barcelona in the Montjuïc circuit. That's the final stage of Catalunya, Volta Catalunya. It's a slightly different angle, I think, or different approach. They do the Castel de Montjuïc climb, 900 meters, 9%. It's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Straight descent into another punch uphill, which is a little bit shorter, I think. Are there bonies at the top of the first climb?
Yes. Well, there are on the Castello, the Montjuïc bonus seconds. So if that's the case, then you've got 6 for 2 bonus seconds for the first 3 riders. And we need to consider also, this is across the entire Grand Tour that you've got either bonus seconds on a climb or at the intermediate sprint and stages. So in this specific stage, it's on the Montjuïc climb. And that's going to spice things up in the GC group, regardless of whether it's a breakaway winning or not. So we're destined to see some GC skirmish behind in this stage. And then I've got the question, looking at the stage before, okay, we've got the team time trial. I think the winner of the team time trial will also decide how this stage is being done. As in, are we going to see Ineos control if they won the team time trial? No, I don't believe that.
For Thomas to lose 16 seconds, bad idea.
Exactly. Are we going to see Jumbo-Visma control if they win? That could go either way, depending on whether they want to risk controlling for 180 kilometers for the sake of 16 bonus seconds. It's somewhat worthy to try, I'd argue, but I also think that Vingegaard might end up losing bonus seconds to otherwise as a consequence. So
I think he'll gain
this could
more.
also be a break. Gain more.
Well, like Ayuso is suspect sometimes. Like you mentioned it before. His flat sprint is insane. He has such a good flat sprint, which he showed in Romandie and other races. But in random moments, his punch uphill sucks. Like it does. In the Vuelta last year, he was struggling on one of the early punchy stages. He's a curious rider, and so it's almost similar with Almeida. So would you be surprised if it all kicks off on Montjuïc, that a GC rider like an Almeida, like an Arensman, get caught behind if the really punchy guys full send it for the bonies and then go into the descent? I wouldn't be surprised.
Especially the likes of Arensman. We've had moments in Arensman's career where you had these weaker moments on stages that aren't the big stages, the hilly, punchy, smaller races where you don't expect the big gaps to happen. So that could happen. You could see 30 seconds lost for a rider like that on a stage like this. But is there a chance for a breakaway? I think it's possible. I think it's not impossible for a break to win. Then a Gerhards and so forth could do it. But
good shout.
Regardless of the break, regardless of the peloton, there's only one man that will win this stage. And you hinted it already, but I'm going to steal
it, you bastard.
Well, I have it on my notes. I wrote it before you said it. Romain Grégoire is going to win this stage.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. I don't see how he doesn't win. To be
Well, there's quite a few scenarios I can think of.
I don't see how he doesn't win. But yeah, that's for real. Like, there's someone like a Gita who could come out of nowhere and win the stage as well.
Nah, fuck that.
You don't think
not
so?
happening. I don't believe.
Okay. I'm gonna go for my sleeper is Oscar Onley. Actually, low-key punchy rider.
Really?
He beat Vingegaard in Crow Race in some punches last year, but this is slightly different. I'm gonna go for super weird one. Frailer.
Terrifying.
Omar Frailer. I think Ineos should let him go for it to take Bonies away.
Mate, does that not complete his 3 Grand Tour stage wins?
Yes.
I reckon he had Giro and Tour.
Yes.
I have him for a different stage, so
I'm going for Frailer. It won't happen, but they should put him in the they should put him in the break and try and make the break go all the way. But yeah,
in reality, you expect Romain Grégoire to be your actual pick, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Vingegaard.
Okay. Vingegaard?
Cool. Yeah.
I would have expected Roglic or Vingegaard for Jumbo on this one.
Grégoire. He's too good. All right, move on to stage 3.
Yes, stage 3, it's a mountain stage. Already, we've got a proper mountain stage. We're going towards your home from Spain into the likes of Andorra. We've got the Col d'Ordino, which is a climb I've done. I've done the other side twice.
The hardest side.
The hardest side. Ooh, yeah. I've done the harder side, people. But these riders are doing the easy side. They're off. God. But it's a very long easy side, as in 17.5 kilometers at 4.9%. Doesn't exactly say the actual truth of that climb, I would say, because in the first 10 kilometers there's about 4 kilometers with 2% average, but it's the second half that is the hardest, with 6 kilometers following each other up at 8, 7, 7, 6, 6, 7%. So it's still a very rough climb, but it's kind of the attrition climb towards the next climb, I'd say, which is Arinsal, which is the final climb, comes directly after the Ordino descent. At the end of the descent, they've got this roundabout that all the riders will be going into. I'm very curious how that's going to end up, because that's rather technical for the end of the descent. But Arinsal stuff, as in the first kilometer is 5.4%, but then it starts to gradually ramp up to 6, to the likes of 8.2, 8.3, then 1 kilometer of 7% again, but then we hit the very steep ones, which is 10.1%, 9.7%, 7.5%. Have you done Arinsal?
I haven't. It's super hard.
You're scared.
I just haven't got around to it.
You're scared.
Yeah, a little bit. It's super hard. The average altitude of the climb is 1,700 meters. There's so much climbing in this stage which isn't categorized, which, the riders will get to. They'll have been climbing for 10 minutes, and then they'll see a KOM marker saying the climb has started, and they'll go, what the fuck? I've been climbing. Like, for example, you got to do 2Ks at about 9% up to Canillo to start the climb to Ordino. And that's steep already. It's basically you start climbing from Andorra la Vella up to Ordino. That goes to 2,000 meters. It's not high altitude, but there's an effect after 1,500 in particular. Yeah. It's a very short recovery. It's like a 12-minute descent, basically, from the top of Col d'Ordino to the La Massana roundabout, where you turn right. Not much recovery. Uphill all day. It could be super hot. It's really hot here at the moment. If you've got a strong wind and it's hot, it could be feral, to be honest. And I think this is Taramay break day. I think a lot of teams are looking at this like, nah, I'm not interested. Because
really?
If you're Ineos, what do you get out of this stage?
Not that much.
No, and if you're Jumbo...
Yeah, but Ineos will not control a stage at any point in this Grand Tour.
Okay, so let's start with Jumbo. Do they want to control this?
Nah. This is breakaway stage for me, where the break will go ahead. Break will have a chance of winning the stage. But then if we take a look at the actual GC fight behind, we'll see a GC fight. We'll see differences. But it just won't be the controlled stage toward GC fight for the stage victory.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a breakaway, but there still, as Benji said, should be gaps on the final climb. It's hard. It's actually harder than Picon Blanco, in my opinion. So I'm going with Filippo Zanna to win from the breakaway. Oh. He might not have lost enough time on GC. My saver is Wout Poels, if he's in any half-decent shape as well for Bahrain, because if there's a break, Bahrain should be in it. I like those two. I would like Lenny to just lose a bucket load of time and go in the breakaway. And it's a really good climb, I think, for him as well. And he can win. So, yeah, but I'm going with Zana. Maybe I think he's not respected enough that they'll be too worried about him taking the jersey either.
I think that's a very possible thing. Now, I'm always curious when it comes to the other teams. If we're just starting to look at the Lotto Destiny, you said Van Eetveld, top 10 GC, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I was for him for stage wins throughout this Grand Tour, and if he's in a break on this stage, he could easily end up fighting for that stage win, but there's so many riders like that, and you said it. It's about whether they lose time by this point in the race, and there's going to be riders that decide to do that because it's an obvious stage, like Rubio, for example, a Guerrero. They can win in that install. There's options for all these teams to do that, and I reckon Astana might be a good call as well, because they got those kind of riders that could also do well in like a first week of a Grand Tour, like a De La Cruz, a Dombrowski. Those could also do well in a first week, but I'm going to go for Geoffrey Bouchard.
Nice pick. Strong, pure climber on Age Desert Citroën. So yeah, I think a climber's breakaway goes, and as even if Van Eetveld, say he's lost a minute from TTT and Montjuic, I don't think Jumbo would care about Van Eetveld taking 2 minutes, 3 minutes, like
exactly
the TTT. So maybe I think it's fine. Stage 4. This is probably the first opportunity to introduce the sprinters. 185 Ks. It's very similar. It finishes in Tarragona, starts in Andorra la Vella, downhill mostly down to the sea. It has 2 little warm-up climbs. It's a typical Catalonia stage, 4K 6% before finishing with a little uphill kicker in town. This is why I thought Lecoq should do this. We haven't really mentioned the sprinters, but yeah, the big 3 I would say are Dainese on DSM, Milano, and Gerben Thijssen, who's already podiumed a few Vuelta sprints. Then it really drops off, frankly, like Mantin, Peñalva, Govacar are kind of breakaway sprinty types, as well as Garcia Cortina on Movistar. And even, frankly, Ganna can win group sprints if he gets it right out of a corner. In Wallonie, if he gets it right out of a corner, he can win.
But in the Dauphiné, we had that sprint where Groenewegen and Bennett got relegated. Govacar had a really good sprinter, and I wonder, is that a sign of something great that we haven't explored yet? So I'm going to go for Govacar for the sake of, I want this guy to show his potential in regular sprints.
Bauhaus. Maybe. It's a little uphill, this finish. So who's going a little uphill finish? I'm going Milano. I think Milano's the best here. Although Dainese was pretty good in the uphill drag in Norway last week. But I'm going with Milano. Stage 5, basically the same stage, like literally copy-paste. 187 Ks from Morella to Burriana as we head south, I think, to Valencia. I'm going Milano again.
I'm going Dainese.
Dainese, okay. No breakaway here?
Well, no break. Well, it's hilly enough to have a breakaway, but I think there's enough teams in the peloton that might be intrigued to still do it for the sprint, because they also have like sprinters where like half of the sprint field isn't really a sprint field, so their teams might still feel like they have an opportunity to win. There's bonus seconds in intermediate sprints in these 2 stages, by the way, so we're going to have to see something there. Like the GC will have a sprint for bonus seconds with 11 kilometers to go in this sprint stage, so that's got to be curious. But anyway.
Wow, that's weird.
Stage 6, because we already ruined our entire order at this point, but we've got Laval Duicho. You're going to have to pronounce that properly for a second right now.
Laval Ducho.
Okay, I'll take that. Observatoria Astrofisico de Javalambre. And this is one that we've seen so much in the Vuelta before. This is one of those Unipuerto stages, not completely flat before the final hill, but that final hill is a medium mountain, I would declare, because the first 5 kilometers, it ramps up. Like, this climb is exponential. Starts at 3.6%, then 4%, then 7%, but the last 5-ish kilometers is 10.5, 11.2, 10.4, 9.3, 8.9. Is this the finish where Dan Martin won ahead of Roglic and Carapaz, or is this not the one?
No, that was easier than this, I think. This is a Bala one, no? Was this his first win in the World Champs jersey when he was in the big drought? In 2019. He won. No, that was Marcelo Costa. I don't know. So Astrofisico, they used it. Madrazo, this is the Madrazo one, Benji, from the breakaway.
Oh, God.
In 2019. And it's a very similar stage.
With Yatzabol.
Yeah.
In the breakaway.
So he's here as well, probably for Burgos. So This is another one where I don't know who's going to control.
Yep.
It could be breakaway like that day as well. It's a hard enough climb that there can be differences, but it really is quite steep at the end. And for example, on that stage, Roglic took 30 seconds on Pogačar, and Lopez took I don't think it was in the break. So 30 seconds is a lot on a climb like this. And on Quintana, Roglic took nearly a minute with Bala. So punchy climb. I think I'm going to go with Remco Evenepoel to win this.
Are you? You're going to go from the GC group? Ooh la la.
Yeah.
I'm from the GC group, I'd go for Roglic personally.
Oh yeah, would probably be a favorite.
From the breakaway, I'll go for Willy Hagelsberge on Jaiko.
Ooh, nice pick. Nice pick. Engelhardt, can he climb? Nah, not that well. Stage 7, another sprint stage from Utel to Olivia. On the coast, again, one of those weird intermediate sprints with the bonies and the sprint points with about 30 Ks to go. But probably the GC guys will be hoping the break takes that. I think this is this could be a very fast day. Very, very fast day. And I don't know if this is in crosswind country, but I'm going to go with Ghana to win this one. Just a late flyer.
A late flyer for this stage. I've gone for Manuel Peñalver of Burgos.
Nice. He's actually he's not bad.
Didn't he win an Algarve stage?
Oh, I think he might have been like top 3 did or something.
I don't remember.
What's his best result, Peñalver?
Second in a Valenciano stage.
Yeah, that was it. He's 24. I mean, he could. Anyway, that's another sprint stage. Stage 8 from Denia, which every rider will know well. It's where they do all their camps in the winter. They'll be back there in December. 165 Ks to Lloret de Catí, Costa Blanca Interior. So they go into the interior of the Costa Blanca. This could be hot as fuck in the late August. This is a hard stage. This is hot, this is a hard stage. It reminds me a lot of like a Monde or a Puy-Marie stage in the Tour de France where, okay, it doesn't look like high mountains, but if you got 35 degrees, 40 degrees beating down on these guys all day, and then you have this ramp at the finish, which is the Lloret de Catí, 3.8 Ks, 11.5% average, then a short descent before a little uphill finish at the end. Rampas Inhumanas engaged. I think it's break, Benji, because it's a filthy stage to control. But I also think there's going to be GC action too. I don't know who will come out on top, but it's there's also that weird bonus sprint. I think the break's going to take that bonus sprint, frankly. Who you got?
I've got Leonard van Eetveld for this one from the breakaway, but Grégoire could also be in the breakaway on a stage like this. Many opportunities here, but Van Eetveld is mine.
Van Eetveld you got. I'm going to go Rein Tarame from the breakaway. He's been a little bit anonymous this year, has he not? But, you know, he comes ebbs and flows, Rein Tarame, so I like him as well. Hopefully Bardet also is a good option. If Bardet's lost time, he can also win this sort of stage from the breakaway. But yeah, that'll be a super hard day, and don't be surprised if you see proper GC gaps. Next stage, Benji.
Stage 9, Cartagena to Caravaca de la Cruz, 184 kilometers long. It's not a pure Unipuerto. There are climbs in the stage. The first one is with 50 kilometers to go roughly. The Puerto de Casas, La Marina, La Perdiz, 12 kilometers, 4.9%. So it's a tuition stage at this point. Like breakaway will be up the road. I reckon a breakaway might end up winning the stage because the last climb is also not the hardest. 8.2 kilometers, 5.4%. It's not something where you as a GC rider think, oh, I'm going to take minutes here. And also it's scary because there's a bonus second sprint at the bottom. So as any GC rider, you don't want to sprint there. So please breakaway, take the bonus seconds.
I'm gonna
go ahead. Who's your pick?
I agree. I'm kind of in this theme of breakaway because it all depends on the race situation. Maybe Jumbo would chase and try to set up a Roglic win, but maybe Soler wins. I forgot Soler's here and he'll probably get his own freedom. I'm going to go with Ruben Guerrero from Movistar, but I also think that Kevin Vogel has a decent chance for this.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick Vogel, huh? You're going to pick Guerrero. That's how we're doing it. Next up.
Well, that's the first week I would say in terms of tactics, I don't see it too much in this week. The only tactical things, we basically had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 uphill finishes. And so 5 of the 9 or 5 of the 8 road stages will be uphill finishes where we will see which team controls, and everyone will look to Jumbo to control. And whoever wins will depend on what they decide to do. But in terms of 60-kilometer raids, I very much doubt it in this first week, frankly. Rest day. Well,
it's hard if the majority of the stage are Unipuerto stages.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no difficult climbs in the middle of any of these stages, except for Col Lorino, and that's near the end. So, and that's not even that difficult. So it should all be uphill finishes, maybe breakaway taking 75% of them. Rest day, we've headed into the interior of Spain, baking hot. Valladolid to Valladolid, 25 or 26 kilometer TT, little bump of 500 meters, 7% punch in the first third. There's an intermediate time check halfway through. It's not too technical, but I wouldn't say it's non-technical either. There's enough corners and 180 degrees and whatever. I think, I don't know who wins this TT. I mean, how much time should Remco? He said he expected to take 40 on Gegenhardt in that Giro TT if he wasn't sick. Does Ganna get worse in TTs as Grand Tours progress? Is that a theory I just made up?
You might have, but I don't really care if I'm Remco Evenepoel about Ganna. I want to take time on GC riders, and if that gives me the stage win, that gives me the stage win. But I'm rather focused on taking time on Roglic, and I think he should try and gain half a minute on his competitors at least. And Vingegaard is a difficult one. I can't predict this flat TT for Vingegaard anymore after what we saw at the Tour de France. The guy could arrive and win by 17 minutes, or the guy could arrive and win by 30 seconds, could lose by 30 seconds on a time trial like this. I reckon it's between Remco and Ganna for the stage win. Yeah. And I reckon Remco takes about 27 seconds on Roglic and 17 on Vingegaard.
Yeah, sounds about right to me. I think a bit more, maybe 10 seconds more each way. I think Roglic and Vingegaard might actually do the same TT, but Thomas as well. He's got to take time on Almeida and Ayuso. Again, he'll be trying to take 30 seconds on them. Thomas, it might only be 20 because Thomas is, a great flat time trialist. But yeah, I got Remco for the stage, and it's hard to look past his his World Championships TT. Yeah. And so, yeah, I can't go past him.
I'll go for Ganna then for the sakes of controversy.
Stage 11 from Lerna to La Luna Negra Vinuesa. Again, this is a soft Unipuerto uphill finish with a bonus sprint beforehand. We've had about 4 of these so far. This is the softest of them. Really should not be gaps. This is the Cyprus stage I think Dan Martin did beat Roglic on in the 2020 Vuelta ahead of Carapaz. But I think this is Roglic now. I think it's short enough and easy enough. I think this is Roglic win.
I think this is breakaway win again.
Okay.
There's a big chance that one of these Unipuerto stages will go to the likes of a Roglic if Jumbo decides to control it and wants to go for the bonus seconds in the way that you said at the start of this podcast. But I'm also of the opinion that everybody in that group will be terrified about the intermediate sprint at the bottom of the climb. Like genuinely, how unbeneficial is it to sprint at the bottom of a climb? You're fucked.
I don't think they will. I think the teams will try to let the breakaway take it.
Yeah, or we'll try and get teammates to steal it away from everybody.
You send Hajduk to sprint.
Yeah.
You send who can sprint on Jumbo?
Van Baarle has a sneaky sprint.
Yeah, I think they do that. And Casper Pedersen. Quickstep will send Pedersen. And so it'll be, like a chess match. But yeah, I don't think it's too much difference. These guys are freaks. They can recover very quickly from a sprint. And listen, if one guy sprints, you don't want to just give him 6 seconds, but I don't think Roglic is not beating Casper Pedersen in a flat sprint. Yep. So actually, it could be a waste of time. Who did you go for? Who did I go for? I went for Roglic. You went for break, did you?
I'm going to go for Javier Romo, who was really good at Burgos, actually.
My breakaway guy's Lascano.
Romo was 7th at Burgos.
Yeah. He's so good.
I didn't realize he was so close in that race. Like, he's really stepped up, and he's going to take the stage from me.
Okay. Yeah, if he's in the break, a big engine, he can work on the flat too. So that's why I like Lascano. I hope those 2 Spanish versatile riders get in and they have a battle. We haven't mentioned Herrada.
Not
Or
doing
Soler. Soler also will be in the break.
No.
Stage 12, sprint stage from Olvega to Zaragoza, 152 kilometers long. It could also just be a random like breakaway stage because the sprinters teams can't be fucked because there's the high mountains tomorrow. But
Belgium.
I think it's too easy. Who you got?
Belgium. It's between Thijssen or Menton, so I'm going to go for Thijssen for this one.
Okay. I am going to go for... Who else can sprint? No one sent any sprinters to this race. It's outrageous.
Turns?
Nah. I'm going to go for Dainese to win this.
I'll allow it.
I haven't picked him for any of them. All right. Bring us to the mountains, Benji.
Stage 13 is pretty special because I reckon this was supposed to be in a Vuelta a few years ago where we had the Tourmalet planned, but then because of situations, politics, I think, we had that stage taken out and the Adamant for Miguel finish placed instead where Jonas Aguirre, absolutely destroyed it. Roglic had a bad day. Vestgate, that was that day. And now we've got Col du Tourmalet. From Formiguel we start. Col du Tourmalet at the finish line, but lots of mountains in between. We start very high up already at about 1,600 meters. We go 200 meters higher to the top of the Col de Portalet, which is the Puerto de Portalet. I love how they Spanify. Is that a word? Now it is. The names of these climbs. Then a major descent of roughly 26 kilometers to the bottom of the Col d'Aubisque, 16.6 kilometers at 7%. In the descent, I think is d'Aubisque the one where we've got, it's not Telegraph, is it? In the descent of Aubisque, which one is it? Soudan? No. There's a climb that is like the shoulder of Aubisque. Anyway, that one we hit in the descent of the Aubisque. Meanwhile, we go to the bottom of the next climb. This is roughly still with 60 kilometers to go where we we come to the bottom of the Col de Spondel, which is the big one. We saw that one in the Tour de France 2 years ago, last year, because it feels like 2 years ago. 10.4 kilometers at 8.1%. One can kill a man on this climb.
Was
that the quote? Yeah. Shit's gonna stir up here, right? And we've got a descent again with a small valley. So a 20-kilometer descent with a 10-kilometer valley towards the bottom where it gradually starts moving up towards the Tourmalet, which is 18.8 kilometers, 7.4%. Rough climb at the finish line. Jonas Vingegaard territory?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's hard to go past him. Yes, it's not the longest stage like Col d'Orloz, but there's a lot of this is all climbing jam-packed into this, even from out the gate. Particularly, all three climbs are longer than 30 minutes, and Aubisque and Tourmalet is closer to the hour mark. I think this is, Vingegaard will try and make a statement, and he'll be the favourite probably for the stage if he's shown good shape up to this point. But I think Ayuso takes his podium spot on this stage.
Okay.
This is what he's good at, attritional stages. Same with Almeida, but I like Ayuso for the stage too. But if Vingegaard's in top shape, you can't go past him for it.
I reckon, unironically, I don't know if he'll do it, but I feel like there's opportunities for early action on the stage as well. As in, if you do have Roglic and Vingegaard, and you're in a situation where you need to figure something out, which they might not at this point, but there's opportunities to put satellite riders in the breakaway here, then on Spondel, try and bridge towards them with Roglic on top, and then try and go through that valley like that with Vingegaard sitting on the other GC riders. That option is very much possible here. Do they need to do that to win? No. But it's fun.
Exactly, and you got that bonus gate, so people will be sprinting on the top of Spandel unless the breakaway's taken it. And the break could even form out of neutral because there's that climb from Formigal. I think it's going to be a really interesting stage. Aronsman could go well. He's nice on the long climbs. But Evenepoel will surely come under attack. If he's leading, if he's in red after the TTs, and he'll take some bonies and sprints too, this is the first big day where he's going to be put under a lot of pressure. And I think Vingegaard wins this stage. The next day doesn't get any easier for him. We're leaving France back into Spain. From Sauveterre de Berne to Lara Belagua. Flat first 50 Ks, then they do the Col Orser, 11.6 Ks, 8.3% with some steeper sections in their descent. Little valley before the Col del Royamendi, 10.3 Ks, 9.1%. Harder than Spandel, and then it's a false summit, and then you have a little kicker steep up to the top of Puerto de la Rao, which has a bonus gate at the top too. That's like a 45-minute climb at least. Descent, another kicker, weird little valley before a soft finish. So this is kind of like it's kind of like the Col Terray stage to me. Now, Eromendi's not as hard as Tourmalet, but it's got 2 long climbs before, which was Aspin Tourmalet. This has 2 ore category climbs, or especial climbs, they're called in the Vuelta, before a recovery period and a soft finish. I think this is going to kick off again, and this is where I see the tactics really come in and what's going to happen, and it all depends on GC positions. But I don't know. You go. Who you got? I'll let you go.
There's a potential raid stage here, like Trotnik into the breakaway, then on the Puerto de la Rao, there a move by someone of the leaders. There's an option here. It feels like that kind of stage where the final climb isn't hard enough necessarily for action, so you gotta attack on the second last one if you do want action here. And if they make the race hard, then the break won't win. If they don't make the race hard and they skip the La Rao climb in the peloton, then we've got a breakaway victory. But I'm gonna go for action. I want entertainment. I want the raid stage. I think we see I'm gonna go for this. I'm going to go for the fact that Roglic tries to bridge to Trotnik on Puerto de la Rao. Then in that valley, we see the other GC riders behind trying to figure it all out with Vingegaard in the wheel. And then on the last climb, because all the others were worked through, Vingegaard ends up winning the stage, even though the climb at the end is not necessarily his favorite.
True. I'm going to go for Enrique. Nah, Mas can't win. It's not hard enough at the finish. I'll go for Remco.
Okay. Last climb does fit him, I think.
Yeah, the last climb's really, really good for Remco. Stage 15 from Pamplona, the base of Team Movistar, to Lecanberry, near the Basque Country. I think we've had a finish here before, even this climb before the Puerto Zuarrate. 6.3K, 5.1%. It's a soft, medium mountain stage. This screams breakaway to me, and I'm going for Marc Soler.
Okay, you're going to go for Marc Soler. I'm going to go for Omar Freiler or Lascano. Lascano. I think Thomas de Gent will be targeting this stage with the flat finish, but it might be a little bit hard, and if Soler kicks off, it'll be difficult for him. Also, don't be surprised if you see Butrago in the breakaway if he's fallen out of GC, or Engelhardt also can win from Jaco Lula. I think it's a nail on break. That's the end of week 2. 2 super hard mountain stages, a couple of, and mostly breakaway stages. But stage 16, Benji. This is classic Vuelta. Classic Vuelta. We've got a stage from Liencres Playa to Beges. It's kind of reminds me of the Magnus Court stage where there's that hill at the end, but the last hill is harder in this race, I reckon, because it's basically 2 ramps in one climb, the last 5-ish kilometers of this stage. After a completely flat stage, the first ramp is 1.6 kilometers, 10.7%. But then it doesn't completely flat out midway to climb, but then it starts the second ramp, which is 2.7 kilometers at 9.2%. I'm going to go for Gregoire or Vauquelin from the breakaway. Gregoire it is. But it's a very short stage, so it can be controlled, but Gregoire wins either way.
I don't think it's 120 Ks. It's a 2-hour 45 stage. I'm going to go for Vingegaard to win this in an uphill sprint.
Gregoire beats them all the GC riders one-on-one.
I don't think it's 5Ks, nearly 9%. It's on the. I think that's too much on the limit for Gregoire. If it was 2Ks, 10%, I could get on board with it. Roglic should probably still be the favorite, but no.
It's a shame you don't believe in miracles.
I mean, I hope he does. But next stage, another 120K stage, but this one's a lot harder. From Ribadesella to Alto de Angleru. We're up in the Asturias short stage. We've got 2 walnut climbs that actually, they're difficult climbs. They just look dwarfed by the Angleru, but you can, first we have the Alto de la Coladella, 6.5Ks, 8%. That's not easy. Then you have the Cordal, 5.7Ks, 8.5%. I believe that's where David de la Cruz attacked a few years ago. Yeah, or maybe that was before something else, and there was another DSM rider in the valley or something. Bardet was attacking.
That's the kind of attack moment Latour would attack.
Yeah, you can, but it's a hard climb there, and then we have the brutal Angleru, 11 or 13Ks, 9.5%, but the final 6Ks are at 13.3%. You know, we've talked about tactics, but we've talked about bonus seconds. But if you crack badly on this, you can lose a lot of time, even though it isn't the hardest stage. Who do you have, Benji?
Alexander Vlasov.
No, it's too long.
He was good on Angler last time.
Was he?
Yeah, didn't he? Yeah. What year? I don't remember. 21?
2020 on Angler, he came second, 16 seconds behind Carthy, same time as Mas and Carapaz. Roglic lost 26 seconds to huge Carthy.
Like, Vlasov is not on Vingegaard level on paper. Vingegaard should on paper win this stage, but Vlasov.
I don't see it because Roglic was stronger than him pretty much whenever he wanted to in Burgos, but this is a different climb to Lagunas de Neia. Could the breakaway win this, or is it too short?
No, I don't believe it. They're going to die on Angleru.
Yeah, you're probably right. Hard to go past Vingegaard for this stage, assuming he's in good shape. So I pick Vingegaard. Hopefully Enric Mas is in good shape because he went too early last time or before they used Angleru. So he's my saver, Mas.
This is the climb where you will see the truth, I would say, because
or I reckon Tourmalet, you'll see it.
You know, on Tourmalet you can still play tactics, rolling attacks on Remco, for example.
True.
But I feel like on this climb you will see whether, even with the rolling attacks, this climb is hard enough that those won't necessarily matter in the end.
True.
If Remco's good enough, he's going to beat both of them here. If not, then he's not going to beat both enough. That sentence made no sense anymore, but you know what I mean.
Exactly. Like they're not going to attack him early on those early climbs. That's a terrible idea. So it's all going to be, you're right. Like, who's the best on 15, 18, 20%? And the next day is kind of where those tactics could be in play. Brutal stage from Pola de Alande to La Cruz de Linares. This is a new climb they're using, 180 Ks. And man, the amount of altitude gain in this stage is brutal. I think over 4,000 meters in 180 Ks. And it's just cat ones all day. And they're all irregular, like 5K, 7%, 10Ks, 8.5%, with ramp bass in there, like at 11% sections for 10 minutes. Then another valley with up and downs, like 4Ks, 10% is just a blip in the middle of that valley. And then a bonus gate on top of the first rep of Linares, 8Ks, 8.5%, but there's a 5K, 10.5% section. Descent, do a lap, come back, do it again for the mountaintop finish. A real nasty stage. I think almost like there could be, if you got decent legs, you can survive on the Angleru. You might lose 25 seconds, but if you get dropped on that first rep of Linares or even on the 10% climb, this is a brutal stage.
Yep. Juan Ayuso will win.
Juan Ayuso, you say?
Yes.
I'm going with Joao Almeida.
We've got a 1v1 in UAE
1v1
over here.
I'm going with Almeida. I think he comes
good
for this stage. But yeah, do you think tactics, like this is where if Remco's still in the lead, I mean, or say anyone's in the lead, if you're in the lead, this is a nasty old stage.
Also, next to that, you've got the incentive to go on the second last climb already. So with the bonus gate on top, with stuff like that, also the terrain, the last climb not being the most decisive one in the first place. Yes, it's 8 kilometers, 8.5%, so it's going to be rough. But I feel like this is the kind of stage where they might go early. This is kind of like a Basque Country stage, not in Basque Country. This is not in Basque Country, right?
Well, no, I don't. No, I don't think so. I think it's in the north in Asturias. It's the new Asturias climb. But you're right. Like they could just kick it off on that climb with 90 Ks to go. The San Lorenzo, like that's hard enough. It's 10 Ks at 8.5% with ramps, and you could have a guy ahead already because there's a long enough period. There's 80 Ks before there to get a guy an advantage as a satellite rider. It's a filthy stage, and I really can't wait to watch it. Stage 19 from La Beneta to Iscar. It's just a sprint stage, transition stage. And I'm just going to pick Milano again.
Yeah, Milano as well. I feel like he's better at the end of a Grand Tour, but I might have just made that up in my mind, but my mind says that's true. So we're going to go to stage 20 now. Manzanares, El Real to Guadarrama. This is profile-wise my favorite parkour of this race.
Really?
As in, this is just basically like the stuff that you use to cut wood. What was that called? A saw. This is a saw.
Profile.
Exactly. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 climbs on this parkour. Sorry, but whoever drew this was drunk.
208 kilometers long too. It's a long stage for the Vuelta coming right at the end. Are these climbs hard enough though, Benji? Like a lot of them average 4.2%, 8K's 4%, 4K's 6%, 5K's 5.5%. Is there enough in there? Like the final two climbs, 7.3K's 4% and 4.5K's 6.5%. Is that hard enough? Maybe the action is before. It has to be beforehand, no? They're a nice difficulty where if you have a satellite rider and you're ahead, the satellite rider can really help you, because if it's 5K's 10%, the satellite rider just slows you down.
I think I said this on the Vuelta Reaction podcast. This feels like a raid stage without a clear ramp to launch on.
Maybe you got to be careful sometimes with these Vuelta profiles that there could be a 1K section in one of these climbs, local knowledge, that's like narrower than it looks, steeper than it looks too.
Remco Evenepoel is behind before the stage starts, attacks with 120 kilometers to go. I always want epic stage 20s.
Vingegaard and Roglic look at each other, refuse to chase. Almeida and Ayuso look at each other, refuse to chase. Aaronsman and Thomas won't work, and he rides away with the Vuelta.
I have Evenepoel I had Ayuso for this stage, but I'm gonna go for Evenepoel because this reminds me of the kind of Bologna stage back in the day where you went very early, and I want to see something special.
I'm gonna go with Ayuso in a flat sprint.
Okay.
I think Ayuso in a flat sprint. Final stage is a 100K procession stage in Madrid with a little uphill kicker. I'm gonna go with Cor Vos to win this. No, I'm going Ganna. I think Ganna's gonna do a solo, another flyer.
Agree.
Ganna. Okay, both got Ganna. I do like Remco for the previous stage too, but they're all the profiles, the stages. If we had to pick out the most decisive stages people need to watch, Benji, I would say, first of all,
them.
Stage 8 and stage 8 in particular in the first week, you can't hide on that sort of gradients. And even if there's a break, I think stage 8, but in particular 13, 14, 17, 18, and of course stage 20. So it's nicely spread out, and I think we'll also have a decent amount of action in week 1. I actually think it's a really nice parkour, very typical Vuelta. Maybe the TT could have been 35Ks, 40Ks a flat, but to give Thomas a bit more. And but yeah, it's got ramp pass, it's got everything. I can't wait.
Yep, me too. It's looking good, this parkour, and it's very difficult to predict in what form everybody's going to arrive at this race. Even when it comes to Remco, his time trial was great, but when it comes to his climbing, we haven't seen his proper climbing in quite a bit. So I'm like, okay, will he be on point in that sense? Will he be at his race weight in that sense? Looked pretty good in the interview when it comes to his sharpness. So that's going to be good. And Roglic, will he be able to step up from not being able to drop the likes of Vlasov to being able to drop people in this race? Will Vingegaard be at his Tour de France level? There's so many questions like that. And the parkour it gives many options to try many things. But I also feel like the parkour is hard enough that the strongest rider might end up winning.
Yeah, true. Like, okay, we can talk tactics all we want and say there is a raid stage and 1 minute's a lot and Remco or someone loses a minute on that raid stage, but if you win the TT, if you dominate on Angleroo, if you drop people on Havalambre or Jorte or on Tourmalet, it doesn't matter. Like, you can take that time back and more. So, but I'd love to see tactics play a role as well, and it all depends on shape, particularly with Vingegaard. I think Roglic, I'm pretty confident we know what Roglic's shape is. Like, he might be a little bit better than last year because of good prep, particularly in week 1 where he got dropped on Pico Hanna. But Roglic just straight up dropping Ayuso and Remco on these climbs? No, I don't see it.
Okay.
Vingegaard's the wild card to me. We should go through KOM sprint jersey and all the other jerseys, Benji. Youth jersey. Ayuso is my pick, but if he has a problem, then Max Poole, I think, will take it. But Ayuso, I have to.
Remco's not eligible anymore?
Is he not?
That's what I'm asking you.
Oh, no, Remco's eligible. Oh, well, fuck.
I'm going for Ayuso either way.
Oh, okay. I'll take Remco then. I was going to take Ayuso. But wow, it's a really difficult. I mean, Arensman, Ayuso, Remco, Van Eetveld, Poel. It's a very nice young riders jersey competition.
Yeah.
KOM, it is pretty stacked on that Tourmalet stage. In particular, there's I think 2 special climbs and a Cat 1, and that offers 20 points. No double points anywhere. I think. Who do you think will take it? Someone that has to get in the breakaway all the time.
I don't think Lenny Martinez will just drop GC, even though he should.
No. Oh, and Brooks for youth, I forgot to mention. It could be someone. I think it's a good target for someone like Weli Hagos-Bert. I think he should go for it on Jayco.
I'm going for Bouchard.
Bouchard, I think he's won it before.
Yeah.
In 2019, I'm going for Kevin Vauquelin to win that for Arkea Samsic. It's a worthy target for that team. And he also, I'm not sure I picked him for a stage, but he could win a stage. Sprint jersey, always funny. It's like Valverde won this a million times. There's so many stages that offer 30 points that sprinters have absolutely zero chance to do well on stage 2. So I'm going with Froglic. Bring back green jersey Froglic.
Oh, I love Froglic. Froglic is the best Froglic. Straight
for sure.
up
With the mismatched arm warmers.
Exactly. I don't want them in red. I want them in green. I want Froglic in there. So I want Froglic too, though. I'm gonna go for Ayuso.
I think it's either Froglic or Milano walks it. I think Milano will dominate the sprints. So I think, and he also
Roglic is so likely though.
I know he can.
Fuck it, Froglic. I have to do it. I was gonna pick someone else for the sake of it, but might as well pick who I believe is gonna win that. So Froglic will win. Will win the points jersey. But then we come to the big one, the GC podium, starting with position 3, 2, 2, 1. I'll start because you definitely need to think about that. And you always steal my picks, which I do not like. I do not like that. Third, Remco Evenepoel.
Okay.
Second, Jonas Vingegaard. First, Juan Ayuso.
See,
how that will happen, I don't know. Compared to the stage wins I selected, it makes 0 sense. But I'll take it anyway.
What? I mean, this must have you look at me whenever I do my picks, like the Tour de France, where I put Yates. I either think Vingegaard wins or doesn't podium. He's either in Paris-Nice shape where he'll get smashed, and he hasn't prepared well enough. And Ayuso, Remco, Roglic have all prepared super well, and Thomas, and no Masters count. So 4 other bank contenders, they've prepared really well, properly for this. And if you're not in top shape and he comes in that Paris-Nice form, no chance. But if he's in his good form, I also think with that team, there's stages here that he can take time in every week. So, but that's more the second would be strange, but maybe second year you can third Paris. Anyway, third.
My podium makes no fucking sense, but I'll do it anyway.
I'm trying to do a random one too to see who I'm going third Enric Mas.
Second Hugh Carthy.
No. Third Mas. It's Vuelta Mas, but there's a strong style list this year. I hope he doesn't crash out. And that's more. I hope he does well and gets something out of this season. So third Mas, second Ayuso, and first Vingegaard.
I was expecting you to say first Almeida after saying second Ayuso. That would have been very odd.
I don't think many of the stages are that good for Almeida, to be honest.
I agree. Angliru might.
As I said, I don't think he's good on steep ramps. He doesn't like getting out of the saddle. I think he likes the 8 to 9% for 10Ks. Not
Angliru's too hard.
Yeah, but also too irregular. If it was 13Ks, 9%, very steady, I think it'd be better.
Yep. He needs that 10 kilometers, 9% climb.
Yeah, whereas...
Laporte.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Lowport.
Lowport.
Or Blockhouse, or even Mortarolo is more consistent than Angliru. So, yeah. Or Segede Ala, for example, where he was good. But yeah. Why do I have Vingegaard? Well, who do I have in second? Ayuso. I think the UA team's super strong. I cannot see how UA don't get on the podium. The team is too strong. And with Soler and the Oliveira brothers and Vine, like Vine can, if you're having a bad day, like Vine on certain days can climb better than other GC contenders. And if Ayuso's on one and says, go for it. Or on Bondone, for example. We saw it in the Giro. Vine went for it. He put Roglic in the bin, pretty much. And then Almeida did the rest.
But
yeah.
You spoke about white, we spoke about KOM, we spoke about green, we spoke about the red jersey, all those irrelevant jerseys. Who's going to get the LRCP jersey? From the merch website, shop.lanternrouge.com. It's happening.
Who's going to be the Maglia Negra? I think the last place is school, like that gets the black jersey in the world. Yeah. But yeah, make sure you check out the merch at shop.lanternrouge.com. We've got Tug Buddy. Who's going to be the best Tug Buddy in this Vuelta España? I'm going to go for, who do you think will be the best domestic? I'm going to go for Tratnik. Will Tratnik help Vingegaard if Roglic is out of GC, Slovenian compatriot? But yeah, I can't wait to watch it. Do you think Ineos, Benji, are we disrespecting them too much? Neither of us mentioned them. Why have you got Thomas and Aronsman not on the podium?
Thomas and Aronsman, because I don't believe they're podium candidates here. I think they're top 5 candidates. Thomas at least. Aronsman I don't see on this parkour. I think it's too hard.
I think a lot of these stages don't suit Thomas. He needs an attritional stage like the third week of the Giro, Bondone, Trecimi. He was very, very good. Tourmalet could be good for him, but these punchy stages, Unipuertos, that's not his bread and butter, those watt per kilo tests, and I think he'll struggle there with the last 500 meters acceleration of everybody. He'll lose bonus seconds, maybe even get gapped on the road. But he could take it back in the TT and the other stages. But I'm really excited. This could be the Grand Tour of the year. I'm not even if it is a barnstormer. If Remco,
the century.
The century's a lot, but if Remco is in world-beating shape and having to fix all these problems himself, and Ayuso and Almeida are in great shape, and Vine is leading them out, and Thomas and Aronsman are aggressive, and then there's Roglic and Vingegaard, how will they work chemistry-wise since the Tour last year? I think it could be just outstanding. And even Mas thrown into the mix too, and I can't wait to also see the emergence of Otterbrooks, of Max Poole, of Lenny Martinez, of Gregoire, Van Eydvelt. I think there's a lot of young riders to really be excited about in this Vuelta too that I'll be watching closely. So, Vauquelin too, and the Jayco team with Zana and Engelhard and Bahé. So, really, really excited for this Vuelta. And that's all from us, I think, Benji. We'll round it off. We'll be in Barcelona for the team's presentation this week, or at least I will be, but we'll be there for the TTT. If you see us, make sure to say hello. We'll obviously be wearing the merch. And then we'll be back in Andorra for stage 3. And thanks to your support during the Tour de France and afterwards, Benji and Luke will be here in Andorra for week 1. We'll be doing some watch-alongs as well. So make sure you subscribe to the LRCP YouTube channel to see the watch-alongs on certain stages, some of the Unipuertos. And thanks to Morton for partnering with us for this show and later in the Vuelta. We'll see you then. Ciao.